The silence didn't break me. No, it wasn't the quiet nights, the averted gaze, or the growing distance that shattered my world. It was a sound, a calm, laughing voice coming from behind a half-open door, delivering a sentence that rearranged every single molecule of my existence. My name is Eleanor Anderson, and if you'd seen me just 2 years ago, you would have thought I had it all. A picture-perfect life, carefully curated and filtered for the world to see. But sometimes the most beautiful frames hide the ugliest truths. And sometimes the only way to get your story back is to rewrite the script entirely. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? This is my side of the story. My name is Eleanor Anderson, and if you'd seen me just 2 years ago in the shimmering, sun-drenched haze of Miami, you would have seen a woman who seemed to have everything. A woman radiating a carefully constructed aura of contentment, the kind that photographs well, filters beautifully, and publishes even better. You would have seen the vibrant orchids on the polished marble counter in our sprawling, minimalist home overlooking Biscayne Bay, their petals almost impossibly perfect, just like the image I projected. You would have seen the endless summer, the spontaneous trips to Paris or Santorini that Mason would surprise me with, the casual way he'd drop a diamond bracelet into my palm just because it was a Tuesday. It was the kind of life that screams happiness in every glossy detail, a life designed to obscure whatever might be lurking beneath the surface. And believe me, there was always something beneath the surface. 2 years ago, a lifetime ago, really, I was 48, an age where most women either settle into comfortable routines or embrace a newfound freedom. For decades, I had poured my energy into building my business, a successful real estate development firm that had sculpted parts of Miami's skyline. My days were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and strategic decisions. I was known for my sharp mind, my unyielding resolve, and a certain detached pragmatism that served me well in the cutthroat world of high finance. Love had always taken a back seat, a luxury I told myself I didn't have time for, or perhaps a vulnerability I was unwilling to explore after a few disappointing early relationships. I had learned to thrive in my independence, to find satisfaction in my achievements, but deep down, in a quiet corner of my heart, there was a yearning for something more profound, something deeply personal, a true partnership. I thought I had grown past the need for fairy tales, but a small, persistent part of me still harbored that romantic ideal. And then Mason Lewis walked into my life, a hurricane of charm and promises, a man 17 years my junior who swept me off my feet with an ease I hadn't known possible. He was 31 when we met, a real estate broker who had shown me a few properties. I was initially guarded, accustomed to men who saw me only for my influence or my wealth. But Mason was different, or so I thought. He had a smile that could disarm a bank vault and eyes that seemed to hold a boundless, boyish adoration just for me. He was handsome, of course, with that kind of effortless, sun-kissed appeal that Miami seems to churn out, tan skin, perfectly coiffed dark hair, an athletic build. But it wasn't just his looks. It was the way he listened, truly listened, to my stories, to the details of my busy day, to my occasional lament about the loneliness at the top. He'd remember a tiny detail I'd mentioned weeks ago and bring it up, making me feel seen, cherished, truly heard. He knew how to flatter not just my ego, but my very soul, touching on those hidden desires I rarely voiced. He spoke of a future with me, a shared life, perhaps even children if it was something I desired, a quiet happiness that transcended the superficial glamour of our world. He was the kind of man who could charm the very silence into submission, bending it to his will, filling every quiet moment with an effortless connection. And I, against all my carefully constructed defenses, believed every single word, every whispered promise, every lingering touch, every late-night confession under the Miami stars. I allowed myself to fall, deeply and irrevocably. Our courtship, our wedding, the first few months of our marriage, they were straight out of a romantic movie. Seriously, I sometimes wonder if he had a scriptwriter on retainer. The grand gestures, the passionate declarations, the way he'd hold my hand across the dinner table, his thumb tracing patterns on my skin, making me feel utterly adored. He always had a bouquet of fresh flowers waiting for me when I returned from a long day, always remembered my favorite vintage champagne, always made sure I felt like the most important woman in the world. Our wedding was an extravagant affair, held at a prestigious waterfront venue, a testament to my success, and, I believed then, to our undeniable love. Every guest whispered about how perfectly matched we seemed, how radiant I looked. Our new home, a sprawling, modern masterpiece I had personally overseen the construction of, became a stage for our perfect love story. Dinners with friends were filled with laughter and Mason's witty anecdotes. Our weekends were spent sailing the turquoise waters of the Atlantic in my yacht or exploring new art galleries in Wynwood. He was everything I thought I wanted, everything I believed I deserved after years of independent solitude. I truly believed I had found my forever. My friends, even Patrick, my pragmatic lawyer friend, seemed genuinely happy for me. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years, a profound sense of belonging. But like all movie scripts, ours eventually changed. Imperceptibly at first, like a subtle shift in lighting, then more overtly like a jarring scene cut. The first hint of discord was so faint, I almost dismissed it. A slight delay in his return from work, then another, then another. Traffic, darling, he'd say, his voice a little too smooth, his explanation a little too ready. My logical mind, the one that ran multi-million-dollar deals, told me to dismiss it. Everyone gets caught in Miami traffic, but then the delays stretched into hours. I'd finish my own work, prepare a light dinner, and find myself staring at the clock, the scent of sautéed garlic growing cold in the silent kitchen. The casual, "I'm on my way," texts became less frequent, replaced by radio silence until he finally walked through the door, sometimes well after I'd already eaten. I'd try to keep the conversations light, but his excuses became more elaborate, the weariness in his eyes less about a long day, and more about something else entirely. A subtle tremor of unease began to stir within me. Then came the nights. The grand, king-sized bed in our master suite, a sanctuary that once felt warm and inviting, started to feel vast and cold. Mason would still come to bed, sometimes long after I had retreated, the faint scent of an unfamiliar perfume sometimes clinging to his clothes, which he quickly shed in the bathroom before joining me. He'd usually be asleep almost immediately, his back to me, a silent, impenetrable wall. No more arms reaching for me in the dark, no more quiet murmurs of affection, no more legs tangling in the sheets. I'd lie there, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing, a canyon opening between us. The intimacy that had once been so natural, so consuming, evaporated into the cool night air. I'd reach out sometimes, my fingers brushing the bare skin of his shoulder, hoping for a response, a sign that he was still there, still with me. But there was nothing, just the silence, a different kind of silence than the one he used to charm, this one heavy and suffocating, laced with unanswered questions and a growing, desperate loneliness. I'd stare at the ceiling, the moonbeams painting ghostly patterns on the polished floor, my mind racing, trying to decipher what had changed. And his gaze, that gaze that once made my heart pound, that once melted away all my inhibitions, now seemed to pass through me, like I was a pane of glass. Or worse, like I wasn't there at all. He would look at me when I spoke, yes, nod in all the right places, sometimes even offering a vague, agreeable murmur, but his eyes were distant, unfocused, as if seeing something or someone else entirely. It was a phantom presence in his eyes, a ghost that occupied his thoughts and made me feel utterly invisible. We'd be at a dinner party, and I'd catch him looking across the room, his eyes lingering for just a beat too long on a younger woman before snapping back to me with a forced, almost panicked smile. He'd leave for work in the morning, peck my cheek, a perfunctory gesture devoid of warmth, and I'd stand at the window, watching his luxury car disappear down the drive, a cold dread slowly unfurling in my stomach. The once vibrant connection we shared began to feel like a one-sided conversation, with me desperately trying to engage a phantom. The flowers, once a daily delight, started to arrive less frequently, then stopped altogether. The spontaneous trips ceased. Our dinners became quieter, filled with the clinking of silverware and the hum of the air conditioning, rather than conversation. The laughter that once filled our home was replaced by an unsettling quiet. I tried, of course, to salvage what I felt slipping away. I asked if everything was all right. Just work, Eleanor, he'd say, a weary sigh escaping his lips, his hand already reaching for his phone. Things are stressful at the office. Big deal coming up. My successful businesswoman's mind, the one that understood ambition and stress, told me to believe him. I offered support, comfort, a listening ear. I tried to reignite the spark, suggested a weekend getaway to the Keys, a romantic dinner at our favorite restaurant in South Beach. He'd agree, but with a reluctance that was palpable, his eyes betraying a profound disinterest. The evenings would still be steeped in an uneasy quiet, an unspoken tension that pulsed just beneath the surface of his forced smiles. Our conversations became perfunctory, transactional, stripped of any genuine emotion. I found myself meticulously replaying conversations, searching for a misstep on my part, a wrong word, a forgotten anniversary. Had I become too demanding, too independent? Had the age gap, which he'd always dismissed as irrelevant, finally become a chasm? My once unshakable confidence began to fray at the edges, replaced by a nagging insecurity. I started to scrutinize my reflection in the ornate mirrors of our home, searching for the first visible signs of aging, wondering if I was no longer enough, no longer desirable. The woman who once owned boardrooms now felt lost in her own home, constantly second-guessing herself, desperate to understand what had gone wrong. The sharp, analytical mind that had built an empire was now turning inward, devouring itself with doubt. Every morning, I woke up with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, a persistent whisper of doubt that grew louder with each passing day. My intuition, a powerful force that had guided me through countless business decisions, was screaming at me something was fundamentally wrong. The narrative he had sold me, the romantic film he had cast me in, was unraveling. The perfectly filtered images of happiness felt like a cruel joke. I was living inside a beautiful lie, and the walls were beginning to crack. But there was no proof, just a collection of unsettling observations, a growing chasm in our once vibrant connection, just the silence, and the fear that I was losing him to something I couldn't name, couldn't see, couldn't fight. It was a suffocating doubt, leaving me restless and deeply, profoundly uneasy. I was a woman adrift, trying to navigate a world that had suddenly become foreign, within the very walls of my own home. My internal world, once so clear and resolute, was now a swirling vortex of suspicion and heartbreak. The script had definitely changed, and I was just an extra watching my own story unfold without me. I would soon learn that sometimes the most dangerous truths hide in plain sight, just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. But I didn't know yet just how dramatically it was about to change. The knot of anxiety in my stomach had become a permanent fixture, a cold, hard stone that weighed me down even as I navigated the sun-drenched halls of my opulent home. Days bled into weeks, each one a mirror of the last, Mason's late returns, his averted gaze, the pervasive silence in our once vibrant bedroom, the hollow ring of his glib reassurances. I had tried, in my own way, to bridge the growing chasm. I hosted dinner parties, hoping the effervescent presence of friends, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the hum of polite conversation would coax out the man I had married, the man who used to light up a room with his infectious charm. But even then, he was a shadow, polite but detached, his easy smile a practiced performance rather than a genuine expression of joy. The laughter that filled our home felt forced, the conversations superficial, a thin veneer over the burgeoning truth I was too afraid to acknowledge, too afraid to even name. One sweltering Miami afternoon, the oppressive humidity pressing against the hurricane-proof windows of our waterfront estate, I found myself adrift in the vast expanse of our living room. It was a space designed for comfort and grandeur, with panoramic views of Biscayne Bay stretching out to the horizon, a shimmering expanse of turquoise. The afternoon light, usually a source of comfort and warmth, now felt harsh, almost clinical, exposing every tiny flaw, every unseen dust motes dancing in the air, every fissure in my perfectly curated life. I was attempting to immerse myself in a forgotten documentary on a streaming service, anything to distract myself from the relentless loop of questions in my mind. Asterisk, what has changed? Is it me? Am I not enough anymore? Was it all just an illusion? Asterisk, the cool, minimalist decor, once a reflection of my sleek, ordered life, now felt sterile, almost suffocating in its emptiness. Mason was in his home office, a space he had increasingly claimed as his own, its heavy mahogany door usually kept firmly shut, a barrier against the outside world, and increasingly against me. But today, whether by oversight, haste, or simply an alarming indifference, it was ajar, a sliver of darkness cutting through the otherwise bright, sun-drenched corridor. The faint murmur of voices drifted from behind the slightly open door. It wasn't unusual for Mason to be on calls. His work as a high-end real estate broker often demanded long, intricate conversations with clients or colleagues. I barely registered it at first, my attention still caught by the rhythmic ebb and flow of the ocean outside, the distant cry of gulls, and the muted drone of the television. I was vaguely contemplating what to have for dinner, an everyday thought, a mundane decision in a life that was steadily becoming anything but ordinary. A subtle thirst pricked at my throat, a dry sensation that made the thought of a cool glass of water deeply appealing. I decided to head to the kitchen, a simple, automatic movement, a quiet, almost unconscious shift in my routine that would, in less than a minute, irrevocably change everything. I pushed myself off the plush velvet sofa, the fabric rustling softly beneath me. My movements were slow, almost hesitant, as if some unseen force, some primal instinct, was trying to hold me back, to keep me cocooned in the comforting ignorance of my living room. As I walked, my bare feet making no sound on the polished marble floor, softened by the thick, hand-knotted rugs that dotted the living space, the voices from Mason's office grew marginally clearer. It was an indistinct murmur, a comfortable back and forth, punctuated by soft laughter. Nothing alarming, nothing that demanded my immediate attention. I continued my path, ready to turn the corner towards the kitchen, my mind already drifting to the sparkling water dispenser. Just as I passed the threshold of the office door, the sliver of darkness widening slightly as I drew level with it, a phrase delivered with a chilling, casual cadence sliced through the air and stopped me dead in my tracks. It was Mason's voice, unmistakable, every nuance, every inflection, a sound I knew intimately. But it wasn't the voice he used with me, not the gentle, loving tone of our early days, nor the weary, stressed, often evasive tone of recent months. This was something else entirely. It was calm, almost melodic, infused with an unsettling lightness, a carefree amusement, a laugh bubbling up from deep in his chest, full of genuine delight, the kind I rarely heard directed at me anymore. And in that laugh, there was a profound, shocking disdain. "That old hag disgusts me," he said, the words falling from his lips as casually as dropping a pebble into a pond. The sentence was a whip crack across my soul. "You know, I'm only with her for the money, love." The world tilted violently. The vibrant colors of the living room, the shimmering bay, the clear blue sky, all seemed to blur, to distort, fading into a grayish monochrome haze. My breath caught in my lungs, refusing to move, a silent, strangled gasp trapped in my throat. My blood ran cold, a glacial wave washing over me from the roots of my hair to the tips of my toes, leaving behind an icy, hollow ache. "Old hag." The words echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of my mind. They weren't spoken with anger or even overt malice, but with a comfortable, almost playful contempt, as if he were sharing a delightful, harmless secret with an intimate confidant. And the term, "old hag," it was unmistakably, unequivocally directed at me. My hands, which had been reaching instinctively for the kitchen counter, froze midair, trembling imperceptibly, the faint tremor a betrayal of the carefully composed exterior I always maintained. My heart, which moments ago had been beating with a slow, anxious rhythm, now hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate drum in my chest, threatening to burst free. I stood there, paralyzed, a statue carved from shock and disbelief, every muscle in my body rigid with the monumental effort of not collapsing, not screaming, not making a sound that would alert him to my presence. My mind, usually so sharp and analytical, so capable of processing complex information and formulating rapid solutions, was a blank slate, utterly refusing to compute the brutal simplicity of what I had just heard. It was too raw, too cruel, too utterly devastating to be real. This couldn't be happening. Not in my home. Not from him. And then his voice continued, slicing through the haze of my shock, each subsequent word a shard of glass piercing my carefully constructed reality. "I'm waiting for the right moment," he murmured, a low, conspiratorial tone now, laced with a calculating, almost predatory edge that had been conspicuously absent in his previous carefree laughter. "I can't leave now. We have a prenuptial. I need to find a way to transfer things into my name." A prenuptial, of course. My lawyer, Patrick Doyle, a longtime friend and shrewd legal mind, had insisted on it. A meticulously drafted document protecting my significant assets, a testament to my business acumen, a fortress built against opportunism. At the time, Mason had brushed it off with a dismissive wave of his hand, a mere formality, a silly precaution. "Darling, do you really think I care about your money? It's us I want, not your portfolio. Your success is your success. My love, I just want you." I had loved him for that, for appearing to be above such base concerns, for seeming to genuinely love me, Eleanor, not the empire I had built. But now, those words, so easily dismissed, then as proof of his pure intentions, took on a sinister new meaning. He hadn't dismissed it at all. He had simply acknowledged it, catalogued it, and was now actively, coldly planning to circumvent it. He was not just waiting, he was scheming. The silence that followed Mason's last sentence was profound, broken only by the distant lapping of waves against the shore and the faint, tinny sound of the television from the living room. But within me, there was no silence. There was a violent, seismic shift. In that agonizing, frozen moment, every single one of Mason's small lies, his sudden and increasingly frequent absences, his distracted, indifferent glances, his cold shoulder in bed, the forgotten flowers, the vague, often contradictory excuses about stress at work, they all clicked into place. Every single puzzle piece, scattered and confusing for months, snapped into a horrifyingly clear, undeniable picture. It wasn't me. It wasn't my age or my perceived failings or my imaginary shortcomings. It was him. It had always been him, and it had always been about the money. The clarity was blinding, painful in its intensity. It was as if a thick, suffocating veil had been ripped from my eyes, revealing the stark, ugly truth I had been desperately, willfully avoiding. He hadn't fallen out of love. He had never been in love. Not with me. It was all a performance, a meticulously executed charade designed to extract wealth and status from a woman he despised, a woman he called an old hag. The man I had shared my life with, my home with, my bed with, the man I had given my heart to, saw me as nothing more than a means to an end, a resource to be exploited, an obstacle to be overcome. An old hag whose money was his only true desire, whose trust was a tool to be wielded against her. Then a faint, sugary voice, unmistakably feminine, giggled on the other end of the line. Its sound like a sharp knife twisting in an open wound. "Oh, Mason, you're so bad. But how are you going to manage it? What about Eleanor?" The voice was light, airy, filled with a sickening adoration. "Don't worry about Eleanor." Mason chuckled, a low, dark sound that curdled my blood, making my stomach churn with disgust. "She's distracted, too busy with her businesses. You know, she trusts me implicitly. Besides, she's not exactly going to notice. And as for the prenup, I have a few ideas. Just need to play my cards right. We'll be set, love. Just you and me. Soon. Ashley Brown." I whispered, the name a rusty echo in my throat, a phantom taste of bile rising with it. Ashley Brown, the friend from work, the young, ambitious, overly eager ex-colleague he had introduced me to months ago at a corporate event, her bright blonde hair, her perfectly manicured nails, her wide, innocent eyes, her shy smile, her carefully chosen compliments, all a part of the deception, a meticulously orchestrated play. The occasional texts from Ashley for work that he'd dismiss with a careless wave of his hand, a quick, dismissive glance at his phone. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a carefully constructed, methodical campaign of emotional and financial fraud. A long con, and I was the unsuspecting mark. For a brief, agonizing moment, a wave of nauseating pain threatened to buckle my knees, to drag me down into a pit of despair. The sheer, brutal force of the betrayal, the humiliation, the utter demolition of my trust threatened to overwhelm me, to crush me into dust. My vision swam again, a prickle of tears forming behind my eyes, hot and sharp, but they refused to fall. I wouldn't give him that, not even in my private thoughts, not a single tear. Then something shifted. A tectonic plate within my soul groaned and moved. The pain, sharp and immediate, began to recede, not vanishing entirely, but transmuted, replaced by an icy coldness, a quiet, almost serene clarity that settled deep in my core. The businesswoman, the strategist, the woman who had built an empire from nothing, who had faced down ruthless competitors and emerged victorious, began to stir from her slumber. The raw, gut-wrenching ache of heartbreak was instantly transmuted into something far more potent, a cold, hard, unyielding determination. He thought he was playing a long game, manipulating me, patiently waiting for his moment to strike. He thought I was distracted, that I trusted him implicitly. He thought he was in control, orchestrating my downfall from the shadows of his office, with a giggling 21-year-old on the other end of the line. He was wrong. So utterly, irrevocably wrong. My eyes, which moments before had been clouded with unshed tears and profound confusion, sharpened, focusing with an intensity one hadn't felt in years. A resolve, solid and unshakable as the foundation of one of my high-rises, formed within me. The naive, heartbroken wife vanished, extinguished by the brutal truth, replaced by Eleanor Anderson, the formidable businesswoman. The script had indeed changed, but not in the way Mason envisioned. He believed he was waiting for his moment. But what he didn't know, couldn't possibly fathom, was that the next phase wouldn't be his at all. The next phase would be mine. And I would make sure it was a masterpiece. I took a slow, deliberate breath, the icy clarity solidifying in my veins, chilling me to the bone. My hands, no longer trembling, clenched into tight fists, nails digging into my palms, a grounding sensation. My heart, still pounding, now beat not with fear or pain, but with a fierce, quiet purpose. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't confront. I would simply act. He had called me an old hag, had planned my financial ruin with casual contempt. Very well. He was about to learn that sometimes the old hag has a few tricks up her sleeve, and the game he thought he was playing was just beginning. And I was about to change the rules. The words of that old hag still echoed in the sterile silence of my mind, a chilling mantra of his contempt. You know, I'm only with her for the money, love. The casual cruelty, the utterly devoid of remorse in his voice, had not ignited a firestorm of rage, not a torrent of tears. Instead, a profound stillness settled over me, a terrifying calm that felt colder than any anger. It was as if a crucial circuit in my emotional core had irrevocably snapped, instantly rerouting all raw, searing pain into a cold, clinical processor. The Eleanor who was a heartbroken wife, naive and vulnerable, evaporated, leaving only the architect, the strategist, the businesswoman who thrived on precision and ruthless execution. She was no longer a victim. She was an adversary, and a formidable one at that. I remained frozen for another beat, then two, carefully composing my features. My hands, which had been clenched so tightly my nails had dug painful crescent moons into my palms, slowly relaxed, the faint indentations a secret testimony to the immediate past. My breathing, though shallow and constrained, returned to an even rhythm, each inhale and exhale a conscious act of control. There was no theatrical gasp, no sudden movement, no telltale tremor that would betray my presence, my complete and devastating awareness. Mason was still murmuring into the phone, his voice a low, intimate hum, a sickening symphony of deceit, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred mere feet from his office door. He thought I was distracted. He thought I trusted him implicitly. He was about to learn the profound, fatal arrogance of underestimation. Slowly, deliberately, I turned from the slightly ajar door. My footsteps, which had been light and automatic moments before, were now heavy, each one a conscious act of will imbued with a newfound purpose. I walked not towards the kitchen anymore, the forgotten glass of water a trivial detail in the face of this revelation, but back to the living room, to the plush velvet sofa that felt like a mockery of comfort. I sat down, settling back into the cushions as if nothing had happened, picking up the remote control and resuming the documentary. The muffled voices of the narrators, once a benign distraction, were now a meaningless drone in my ears, background noise to the furious calculations unfolding in my mind. Outwardly, I was Eleanor Anderson, the poised, sophisticated woman of means, enjoying a quiet afternoon. Inwardly, a storm was brewing, a tempest of icy resolve, each thought a precisely aimed lightning bolt. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, not in despair or exhaustion, but in concentrated thought, marshaling my resources, both mental and emotional. The image of Ashley Brown, her bright blonde hair, her perfectly innocent smile, her eager-to-please demeanor, flashed before my eyes. Ashley Brown, the friend from work, 21 years old, young enough to be my daughter, certainly, and just as certainly young enough to be easily manipulated by a charming, ambitious man like Mason, desperate for money and status. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just clicking. They were fusing into a solid, unassailable truth. This wasn't a sudden, passionate affair, a fleeting lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, long-term scheme, a cold-blooded financial maneuver, and I, his wife, was the primary obstacle, the old hag whose fortune he sought to pillage. His words, "I need to find a way to transfer things into my name," resonated with a terrifying clarity. My prenuptial agreement, a document I had considered a prudent but ultimately unnecessary formality, was now his biggest hurdle. And he was trying to figure out how to jump it. The pain was still there, a dull throb beneath the icy surface of my determination, a constant, visceral reminder of the depth of his betrayal. But it was no longer consuming. It was transmuted. It was fuel. It was the precise, measured force that would drive my next moves, every step a deliberate act of retribution. He saw me as an old hag, a walking ATM. Very well. I would show him what an old hag was truly capable of when provoked. I remembered Mason casually mentioning a trip a few days prior, a vague reference to visiting his parents in Orlando the following week. He'd even asked me, with that familiar, almost endearing fake sincerity, if I would miss him. I had smiled, a genuine smile then, and told him, of course, I would. The memory now felt like a punch to the gut, a bitter taste in my mouth, but it was also a crucial piece of intelligence. The trip, an upcoming window of opportunity, an alibi. My internal clock, usually dictating deadlines and board meetings, began to tick with a new, urgent rhythm. Still maintaining the facade of a relaxed afternoon, I reached for my phone, my fingers brushing against the cool glass. I opened my contacts, scrolling deliberately, my thumb pausing over Patrick Doyle's name. My lawyer, my oldest and most trusted friend. He was discreet, fiercely loyal, and possessed a ruthlessly practical mind, honed by decades of navigating the complex legal landscape of Miami. I knew he would not ask unnecessary questions, only listen and advise with cold, hard logic. But not yet. I needed more information first. I needed to move with absolute precision, like a grandmaster anticipating every move on the chessboard, setting up a checkmate that would be utterly inescapable. I opened my calendar app, a shared digital calendar Mason, and I had kept since we married. He rarely updated it meticulously, often preferring to verbally inform me of his schedule, or simply assuming I wouldn't bother to check. But there it was, penciled in for the upcoming Tuesday, Orlando parents. A 5-day block. He told me it was a short, necessary trip, hinting at some vague family drama that needed his presence. His parents lived a few hours north of Orlando, a quiet, almost rural area, far from any major attractions. A 5-day trip seemed excessive for a simple parental visit, especially for Mason, who preferred the city's pulse, the vibrant energy of luxury hotels, and bustling nightlife. Then, I remembered a fragment of a conversation I had overheard just last week, a casual remark he made to a mutual acquaintance during a yacht club mixer. He had been laughing a little too loudly, his arm around my waist, playing the devoted husband. Ashley's taking a few days off next week. He'd said, his voice a little too light, a little too quick to change the subject when I glanced his way. Much needed break from work. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Ashley was a junior broker. Perhaps she needed time off. A casual coincidence. But now, coupled with his recent phone call, the pieces snapped into place with sickening clarity. Orlando. 5 days. Ashley also taking time off. It wasn't a trip to visit his parents. It was a romantic getaway. With her. He was planning to take his mistress to the very city where his parents lived, under the guise of familial duty. The sheer audacity, the unadulterated arrogance of it was breathtaking, a testament to his belief in my gullibility. A cold, hard laugh threatened to escape me, a raw, bitter sound, but I swallowed it down, my throat tight. He was planning a romantic rendezvous in Orlando, likely at a luxurious resort, far from the prying eyes of Miami. He would be using his time away from me, funded perhaps by the credit cards I had given him access to, the very resources he sought to steal. The image of him laughing, talking about me with such profound disgust, while simultaneously planning to use my resources to entertain his young mistress, ignited a quiet fury. It wasn't a blazing inferno, but a deep, controlled burn, steady and relentless, illuminating every detail of his betrayal. My mind began to race, not with irrational anger, but with strategic calculations. Assets, liquidity, timing. Mason's plan to transfer things into his name would take time, weeks, maybe months of manipulation and subtle legal maneuvering, especially with a robust prenuptial agreement in place. He wouldn't dare make any overt moves before establishing a significant financial foothold, knowing that I, the astute businesswoman, would see right through it. He needed my cooperation, or at least my complete ignorance, for his scheme to work. He needed me to remain the distracted wife. But he no longer had either. I mentally cataloged our joint assets, mentally reviewing the complex web of investments, properties, and accounts. The house, our magnificent waterfront estate, purchased entirely with my funds, was meticulously recorded in my name. The cars, a luxury SUV for me, a high-performance sports car for him, were also under my sole ownership, registered to my personal corporate entity. The joint credit cards, though he used them extensively for his lavish lifestyle and purported business expenses, were ultimately tied to my primary accounts, my established credit lines. He had access, yes, but not true ownership. He was merely drawing from a well I controlled, a well that could be shut off with a single command. This realization brought a flicker of grim satisfaction. He had underestimated not only my awareness, but also the impregnability of my financial fortress. This trip was his window, but it would also be mine. His absence, carefully orchestrated for his illicit pleasure, would provide me with precious, uninterrupted time to dismantle his carefully constructed future, brick by painful brick. I wouldn't need to shout. I wouldn't need to scream. I wouldn't need to confront him with his treachery. That would only grant him the opportunity to lie, to manipulate, to play the victim. Confrontation was messy, emotional, and gave the opponent a chance to react, to defend. My approach would be surgical, precise, and executed in the shadows of his blissful ignorance. I spent the rest of the afternoon in the living room, feigning absorption in the television, but my mind was a whirlwind of activity, constructing a meticulous timeline, identifying key actions, anticipating potential obstacles. I had built an empire by seeing beyond the obvious, by finding weaknesses and exploiting them. Mason Lewis, my ambitious, handsome, manipulative husband, had just exposed his greatest weakness, his utter contempt for me, and his staggering underestimation of my intelligence. The decision was made, solid and unyielding. The next phase, indeed, would be mine, and it would begin the moment he walked out that door. I would not allow him the satisfaction of knowing he had wounded me. He would learn the true cost of disrespecting Eleanor Anderson, not with tears or pleas, but with a calculated, silent strike that would leave him utterly disoriented, completely dispossessed, and facing a future he had never imagined. My eyes, now open, saw the entire chessboard laid out before me, and I was ready to play. Checkmate. The words of that old hag still echoed in the sterile silence of my mind, a chilling mantra of his contempt. You know, I'm only with her for the money, love. The casual cruelty, the utterly devoid of remorse in his voice, had not ignited a firestorm of rage, not a torrent of tears. Instead, a profound stillness settled over me, a terrifying calm that felt colder than any anger. It was as if a crucial circuit in my emotional core had irrevocably snapped, instantly rerouting all raw, searing pain into a cold, clinical processor. The Eleanor who was a heartbroken wife, naive and vulnerable, evaporated, leaving only the architect, the strategist, the businesswoman who thrived on precision and ruthless execution. She was no longer a victim. She was an adversary, and a formidable one at that. I had spent the remaining hours of that devastating afternoon in the living room, a phantom presence on the velvet sofa, feigning absorption in the documentary. Mason eventually emerged from his office, his phone call apparently concluded, his demeanor eerily normal. He moved about the house, whistling a jaunty tune, blissfully unaware that his world had just been irrevocably altered. He suggested ordering takeout for dinner, a casual evening in. I agreed, my voice steady, my smile practiced. We ate in polite silence, punctuated by his mundane anecdotes about his stressful day and my equally bland responses about my quiet afternoon. Every word he spoke was a fresh incision, but I felt nothing beyond a distant surgical precision. The cold determination that had settled in my core allowed me to observe him, to analyze his every gesture, every fleeting expression, as if he were a particularly challenging business opponent whose weaknesses I needed to meticulously identify. He truly believed he had me completely fooled. His confidence was astounding, and it was going to be his undoing. That night, Mason turned his back to me as usual, drifting into a seemingly peaceful sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind a relentless engine of calculations. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. I went over every asset, every account, every legal document I could recall. The prenuptial agreement, drafted with Patrick's customary rigor, was a bulwark. I mentally reconstructed my entire financial empire, tracing the legal ownership of every property, every investment, every liquid asset. The primary residence, our Miami estate, was solely in my name, purchased years before I met Mason. The luxury vehicles, the high-performance sports car he drove, the SUV I used, all registered to my corporate entities. The joint credit cards, while he had access, were ultimately under my master account. His plans to transfer things into his name were pipe dreams, dependent entirely on my unsuspecting compliance. He would get nothing. He would be left with precisely what he brought into the marriage, nothing but his charm. The next morning, the Tuesday he was supposedly leaving for Orlando, dawned with a familiar Miami intensity, bright sun, humid air. I had already made a crucial call before he even woke up. Using a burner phone I kept for specific, discreet business dealings, I had called a trusted friend, a former colleague from my development days, who now ran a high-end travel agency. Under the guise of planning a surprise trip for a mutual acquaintance, I subtly inquired about a particular luxury resort in Orlando, one known for its romantic packages and discreet clientele. Any recent bookings from a Mason Lewis or an Ashley Brown for this week? I asked, making my voice sound light and purely curious. The friend, efficient and unquestioning, checked her system. Oh, yes, Eleanor. A Mr. Lewis and a Miss Brown. Romantic suite. 5 nights, starting today. Looks like a lovely getaway. The casual confirmation sent another icy wave through me, solidifying every grim suspicion. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a verifiable fact. He wasn't visiting his parents. He was embarking on a passionate escape with his young mistress. The sheer brazenness of it made my stomach churn, but also hardened my resolve further. Mason woke, oblivious, whistling in the shower. He came out impeccably dressed, radiating that polished charm he wore so well. He found me in the kitchen, sipping coffee, a carefully neutral expression on my face. "Morning, darling," he said, pressing a quick, perfunctory kiss to my forehead. It was cold, devoid of genuine affection. "All packed?" ready to face the parents for 5 days. He forced a weary smile, a theatrical sigh. Gonna miss you, though. Really? 5 days without my amazing wife. His eyes, however, flitted towards the door, already eager to escape. The words were empty, hollow echoes of love, a rehearsed script designed to reassure the distracted wife. I met his gaze, holding it just long enough to make him think I believed him, before offering a small, sad smile in return. I'll miss you too, Mason. Have a safe trip. The pretense was almost physically painful, a knot tightening in my chest. But I knew this was the last performance, my final act as the unsuspecting wife. He grabbed his overnight bag, gave me another fleeting, almost absent kiss, and walked out the door. The sound of his luxury sports car, that expensive vehicle I owned, purring to life and then receding down the drive, was not a sound of departure, but of liberation. The moment the faint hum of his engine faded into the Miami morning, the carefully constructed dam inside me broke, not with a flood of emotion, but with a surge of relentless, crystalline purpose. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. The burner phone was already in my hand. My first call, of course, was to Patrick Doyle. "Patrick," I said, my voice low, controlled, devoid of any tremor that might betray the earthquake that had just occurred in my life. "It's Eleanor. I need your immediate assistance. I need complete discretion and maximum speed." There was a slight pause on the other end, a flicker of surprise in his usually unflappable lawyer's voice. "Eleanor, is everything all right? That sounds serious." Patrick, 56, was not just my lawyer. He was a steadfast friend who had seen me through countless business battles. He knew my tone, knew when I meant business, and knew when the stakes were unusually high. "No, Patrick, everything is not all right. Everything is irrevocably wrong. I overheard Mason speaking on the phone yesterday afternoon. He's been having an affair. And worse, he's actively plotting to circumvent our prenuptial agreement, to take my assets. He believes he's on a trip to Orlando to visit his parents for 5 days. He's not. He's with his mistress, Ashley Brown, in a romantic suite at the Grand Cypress. I laid out the facts, clinically, concisely, leaving no room for speculation or emotional preamble. My voice remained steady, a testament to my iron will. Patrick was silent for a moment, a weighty, stunned silence that spoke volumes. I could almost hear the gears turning in his sharp legal mind, processing the implications. "Eleanor, my God, I'm so sorry." His voice was softer now, laced with genuine shock and concern. Are you okay?" "I will be," I stated, my voice firm, allowing no room for doubt. "What I need right now is action, Patrick, not sympathy. My priority is to protect my assets and ensure he is left with absolutely nothing." He called me an old hag and discussed taking my money with a laugh. "He will regret that laugh. Immeasurably." "Understood," Patrick replied, his professional composure snapping back into place, now edged with a fierce loyalty. "Discretion and speed. Consider it done. What's the immediate priority?" "First, I need you to triple-check the ownership of the house, the cars, all joint accounts, and every single credit card we share. Confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt that everything is solely in my name or under my corporate entities, as per our prenuptial. I know we drafted it meticulously, but I need absolute certainty. No loopholes. No surprises. Eleanor, you know, our prenup is watertight," Patrick assured me, his tone firm. "But I'll get on it immediately. I'll have a paralegal confirm all titles and accounts within the hour. Expect a detailed report. What else? As soon as you confirm the ownership, I want to initiate the rapid sale of the house. I know it's a $4 million property. Patrick, I know selling quickly will mean taking a significant loss. I don't care. I need it done. Today, if possible. I want it off my books, transferred to a new owner, before he even thinks of stepping foot back in Miami. Find me a buyer who can close almost immediately, cash buyer preferred. I don't care if it's 3.3 million. I want it gone. The thought of losing nearly $1 million was usually anathema to me, a shrewd businesswoman. But the cost of my revenge, of reclaiming my power, was immeasurable. The house was no longer a home. It was a symbol of his betrayal, and I wanted it erased. 3.3 million for a $4 million property. Patrick sounded incredulous, a rare breach of his professional decorum. Eleanor, that's a huge hit. Consider it the price of tuition. Patrick, I said, a bitter satisfaction hardening my voice. A lesson for him, and for me. Get it done. And the cars too. Liquidate them. The sports car, especially. It's registered to my LLC. It can be sold with a simple transfer. And all joint credit cards. Block them. Immediately. Not just suspend. Block. Make sure he can't use a single one of them. He's on a romantic getaway with my money. I want to ensure that well runs dry, unexpectedly and dramatically. Eleanor, that's aggressive, Patrick murmured, but I could hear a note of admiration, even fierce loyalty, in his tone now. But effective, very effective. I'll mobilize my team. This will require moving mountains, but if anyone can do it, it's you, and with my firm's resources behind you, we'll make it happen. I'll start contacting our network of quick-sale real estate investors and luxury car buyers. And the credit cards will be deactivated before he even thinks of ordering room service tonight. Anything else for now? One more thing, I said, my gaze sweeping over the opulent living room, now utterly devoid of warmth. Find me a quiet, anonymous place to stay. Somewhere he won't think to look. Not an expensive hotel, just a haven. I don't want to be here when he returns. Consider it done. I'll call you back with an update within the hour. Eleanor, you just focus on yourself. I hung up, a strange sense of exhilaration mixing with the lingering coldness. The game had begun. Mason thought he had me checkmated, but he had just walked directly into my opening move. He had no idea the queen was about to unleash her full, unforgiving power. The real battle for his assets, for his future, for his pride, was about to commence. And I, Eleanor Anderson, was ready to win. The moment Mason's luxury sports car, that gleaming, expensive vehicle that was legally mine, purred to life and then receded down the drive, was not a sound of departure, but of liberation. The faint hum of his engine fading into the Miami morning marked the true beginning of my plan. The carefully constructed dam inside me, holding back a torrent of silent fury and icy resolve, did not break with a flood of emotion, but with a surge of relentless, crystalline purpose. The game had officially begun, and I was holding all the cards. I didn't waste a single second. The burner phone, discreetly placed on the marble kitchen island, was already in my hand. My first call was to Patrick Doyle. His phone rang only once before his calm, professional voice answered. "Patrick," I began, my voice low, controlled, devoid of any tremor that might betray the earthquake that had just occurred in my life. "It's Eleanor. Mason just left. I need your immediate assistance. Maximum speed and complete discretion, as discussed." "Understood, Eleanor," Patrick replied, his voice shifting instantly from cautious concern to sharp, professional efficiency. He knew the gravity of my tone. My paralegal confirmed everything a few minutes ago. The deed for the house, all vehicle titles, and the primary accounts for all credit cards are unequivocally in your name or your corporate entities. The prenuptial is unassailable. He has no legal claim to any of it. A profound, grim satisfaction settled over me. No legal claim to any of it. The words were a balm to the raw, wounds of betrayal. He had thought he could outsmart me, that my heart would blind me to his machinations. He was wrong. Excellent, I said, the word a soft exhalation of triumph. Now we execute. I want the house sold. Immediately. I know it's valued at $4 million, but I need it gone. Fast. Accept $3.3 million if a buyer can close within a week. Cash buyer preferred. I don't care about the financial hit. The cost of reclaiming my life, of teaching him this lesson, is far greater than any sum of money. The house is no longer a home. It's a monument to his deceit, and I want it erased from my sight. Patrick paused, a rare moment of hesitation for him. $3.3 million. Eleanor? That's a $700,000 loss. Are you absolutely certain? Absolutely, Patrick. Consider it the price of tuition for both of us. His education will be far more expensive than mine. Mobilize your network. I want offers on my desk, by end of day, serious offers. And the cars too. Liquidate them. Both of them. The sports car, especially. It's registered to my LLC. It can be sold with a simple title transfer. Get me quotes today. I want those vehicles off my property, out of his reach, before he even thinks of stepping foot back in Miami. Understood, Patrick affirmed, his voice now imbued with a renewed sense of purpose. It will be a logistical challenge, but we have connections. I'll get the listings out to our preferred, discreet buyers for quick asset liquidation. And the credit cards. The credit cards, I stated, a chilling smile touching my lips. This is where we time the strike. Do not block them yet. Not immediately. He needs to feel secure, to be comfortable in his deception, indulging in his little romantic getaway. I want him to believe he's invincible. He's in Orlando, spending my money on Ashley, probably at that luxury resort. Let him enjoy it for a few days. Let him order expensive room service, buy her lavish gifts. Then, 2 days before his scheduled return, we pull the rug out. Completely. Block every single joint card. Not just suspend. Patrick, block. Make sure he can't use a single one of them for anything. I want that well to run dry, unexpectedly, and dramatically. I want him to feel the ground crumble beneath his feet when he least expects it. A well-played strategic delay, Patrick murmured, a hint of professional admiration in his tone. Understood. The cards will be active for 3 more days. Then they go dark. What about the temporary residence I mentioned? Yes, I confirmed. I need to be out of here. By tomorrow morning, if possible. I don't want to be here when the new owners take possession. Find me a quiet, anonymous haven, somewhere unassuming, where he wouldn't think to look. Not an expensive hotel suite, just a discreet sanctuary. Consider it done. I'll have options for you within the hour. You just focus on whatever you need to. Eleanor, my team, and I will handle the rest. I hung up, a strange sense of exhilaration mixing with the lingering coldness. The game had begun in earnest. Mason thought he had me checkmated, but he had just walked directly into my opening move. He had no idea the queen was about to unleash her full, unforgiving power. The next few days were a blur of intense activity, yet executed with an almost unnerving calm. Patrick and his team moved with extraordinary speed and efficiency. By the end of the day, I had 2 promising offers on the house. I chose the cash buyer, who, though demanding the full $700K reduction, guaranteed a closing in 3 days. The paperwork was drawn up instantly, signed electronically, a testament to the modern digital age and Patrick's formidable connections. Simultaneously, my luxury SUV and Mason sports car were quickly evaluated and sold to a high-end dealership that specialized in rapid, discreet acquisitions. Again, I accepted a slightly lower price than market value, prioritizing speed over profit. The financial losses were significant, but they were a calculated expense, a price I was more than willing to pay for my freedom and his ruin. I watched detached as a team of movers efficiently packed my personal belongings, the essentials, the sentimental items, into a few boxes. My clothes, my favorite books, a few framed photographs of my true loved ones, not the staged pictures with Mason. The rest, the grand furniture, the art, the decor was part of the house, part of the legacy I was shedding. Patrick arranged for a small, unpretentious apartment in a secure, quiet building in a completely different part of the city, far from our usual circles. It was stark, minimalist, a blank canvas, perfectly suited to my current state of mind. By Wednesday morning, less than 48 hours after Mason had left, I was gone. The house, my grand, beautiful house, now stood empty, waiting for its new owners, its echoes of Mason's betrayal slowly fading. Life in the temporary apartment was simple, almost monastic. I spent my days remotely managing my business, catching up on reading, and waiting. The anticipation was a potent brew, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my enforced serenity. I kept my burner phone close, constantly checking for news from Patrick, but more importantly, for the silence that preceded the storm. Then came Friday morning, 2 days before Mason's scheduled return. I was sipping my coffee, watching the city wake up from my anonymous balcony when my phone vibrated. It wasn't Patrick. It was a notification from my bank. A simple, stark message. Purchase declined. $3,000 at Lace and Whisper Boutique. A slow, deliberate smile stretched across my lips. Lace and Whisper, a high-end lingerie store. $3,000. For Ashley. The sheer vulgarity, the casual presumption that my money was his to spend on his mistress, was almost comical. He was indulging in his fantasy, completely oblivious to the tightening noose around his neck. The notification was a precise, perfectly timed confirmation of his actions, a perverse satisfaction for my waiting game. He was getting comfortable. And now, the rug was pulled. Minutes later, another vibration, another notification. Purchase declined. $2,800 at the Diamond Kiss Jewelers. He must have tried another card, another attempt to buy her affection with my funds. My smile widened, a cold, unfeeling expression that felt alien on my face, yet utterly right. The well had run dry, and he was just realizing it. Almost immediately, my phone began to ring. It was Mason. His name flashed brightly on the screen, a beacon of his burgeoning panic. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. The insistent vibration against the wooden table was a symphony of his unraveling. It stopped, only to start again seconds later, a different number this time, presumably his work phone. I let that ring too. I imagined him, standing at a cash register, fumbling with cards, Ashley watching, perhaps starting to look less adoring and more annoyed. The thought was a sweet poison. The calls eventually stopped, replaced by a rapid-fire succession of text messages. My screen lit up, each new message a fresh burst of his escalating desperation. Mason *_, love, I can't use the cards. Do you know what might have happened? _. The tone was confused, a little concerned, still trying to maintain the facade of a caring husband. I didn't reply. I watched the 3 dots indicating he was typing Mason *_. Seriously, Eleanor, both cards are declining. Did something happen with the bank? I'm at the resort trying to get something for Ashley, and it's embarrassing. _. The concern was quickly giving way to frustration, a hint of self-pity. Embarrassing. Oh, Mason, you have no idea what embarrassing truly means. Still, I remained silent. My fingers, steady and composed, didn't move to type. Mason asterisk underscore Eleanor, why aren't you answering me? What's going on? Underscore. Now, the desperation was seeping in, a faint tremble in his virtual words. The familiarity of Eleanor, instead of love, was telling. Mason asterisk underscore, this isn't funny, Eleanor. I need to buy a gift, and I can't. My personal card is maxed out. What is happening? Underscore. Panic was beginning to claw at him. His personal card, no doubt maxed out from covering expenses he couldn't put on mine. I watched the messages roll in, each one a testament to his increasing fear, his sense of control slipping away. I imagined his handsome face contorted in confusion, then annoyance, then genuine alarm. Ashley, no doubt, was now less impressed and more demanding. The picture was perfect. I took a slow, deep breath, savoring the moment, the exquisite taste of his impending despair. My composure remained absolute, a fortress against his rising panic. This was just the beginning. He returned, not to the opulent life he'd so readily taken for granted, but to an empty echo of his greed. The house, the cars, the manufactured comfort, all vanished, and in their place, a single, unassuming envelope carrying not tears or rage, but a chilling whisper from the woman he called an old hag. A simple phrase, delivered with the same quiet certainty with which I dismantled his world. He lost everything he thought he had, everything he believed was his for the taking. But the true victory, the profound vengeance, wasn't merely in his dispossession. It was in my reclamation. It was in remembering the formidable woman I was, the strategist who built an empire before his charming lies eclipsed my judgment. Sometimes the most powerful acts of defiance are not born of screams, but of silence, not of destruction, but of careful, deliberate withdrawal. Closing a door, yes, but more importantly, taking the key with you. It's about charting your own true course, even when the currents try to pull you into someone else's shadow. I often find myself wondering about that moment, the precise flicker in his eyes, the sudden void in his lungs, the crumbling of the ground beneath his feet as his carefully constructed vanity dissolved. What would you have done in my place? What would your final message have been? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if my side of the story has given you something to ponder, something to feel, then please consider liking this video and subscribing to my side of the story. There are many truths yet to be unveiled, many silences waiting to be broken. Until next time,